Next, we're going to look at the threads that you can use. And this can be a bit of a minefield and people can get quite confused by it. So we're going to start off with the thicker threads used often for making pendants and that type of thing. The two main types really are the leather or the cotton alternative. So leather, when it's thick, is very strong, but what some people are surprised by is when you go down to the thinner leathers, it's not actually as strong as the woven cotton ones, but it's a nice look and a lot of people want to go with the leather. Comes in various thicknesses and various colours. The alternative, as I say, is like the woven cotton, sometimes called boot lace. It's very strong. Again, comes in a variety of thicknesses, usually starting around 1 millimetre up to about 2.5 millimetres. You can see some of the colours here that I've got. These are all the woven cotton ones, and they're very versatile. We've also got some suede here. Again, comes in a varieties of colours and thicknesses. Tends to be flat, so we use a slightly different end on those for putting a clasp on than we do with the round leather, but we will cover all of those when we actually get into making some of the necklaces. The other one I've got here is hemp, which is quite popular. Again, different thicknesses. Obviously with that one it only comes in the one colour because it's natural state. Again, very strong, a bit rougher looking, so if you want a sort of slightly more rustic look, then that's really useful. So that's the thicker ones. As I say, they're used mainly for pendants and that type of thing, where you're actually seeing some of the cord showing. Next, I'm going to talk about some plastic coated wires. If you've done any jewellery making, you may well have come across some of these already. There's lots of different makes with these. Beadalon is a very well-known make, which is often people actually call this now Beadalon Wire. It's actually a twisted cable. It's got a plastic coating on it. It's the same sort of stuff they actually use to make suspension bridges out of, so it's very, very strong, but it's also very flexible, so you mustn't confuse it with just a regular wire, which we'll look at later, which when bent too many times will break. This is very strong and very flexible. It comes different strand thicknesses, so a kind of quite a common usage is a 7 strand, so basically it's 7 strands twisted together inside the plastic. The more strands usually means the less it's likely to kink, because this is one of the drawbacks of these plastic coated wires, is that they do kink. Once they've got a kink in it, it's difficult to get them out. But as I say, usually the better quality ones are good and can be used very well. The other thing with these is they don't knot. Because of the plastic coating, the knots just slip undone with them. So we use crimps with these, which, as I say, we talked about briefly with the pliers, but we will look at in more detail when we actually make some of the jewellery up and we use some of the crimps. Because of the strength of them, the one thing I usually say to people is I wouldn't advise it for very young children, just because it is so strong. I'd be concerned it might not break if they got it caught. The other thing would be real pearls, because they're quite soft. Obviously this would actually wear a groove inside the pearl. So that's two areas I wouldn't use them for, but other than that they are really, really versatile. So as I say, you've got the Beadalon make, which comes in a 7 strand and the 19 strand are the more popular. We've got some other makes here. This is still an American company, it's just a different name, but it's the same kind of thing. They do a thinner one. They do a 3 strand, which is really very thin. But as I say, there's a range in there. And then there's kind of no-name kind of brand ones, which come in a variety of colours, again, like the Beadalon, same sort of thing, but it's just a bit cheaper as a no-name brand. Something that's sort of similar but a bit different is what they now call soft flex, which is the same kind of idea, but it's much softer, more pliable, and this will actually knot. It's not quite as stiff as the regular plastic coated wires. So these have become very popular now just because I think the knotting qualities and the softness, people like that. But there isn't the colour ranges in these. So if you're having a lot of the wire exposed and you want colours, then you're probably better off with the more basic ones. So that's plastic coated wire. Here's some more of the threads that you may have come across already. I've got here just a waxed cotton, which is nice and fine for using with smaller beads, very strong, very flexible. The waxing on it helps to stop it from fraying and from knotting. This one you can obviously either put a clasp on it, or if it's a long enough necklace you can just knot this. This will be nice and secure. So that's very versatile thread. An alternative one would be the nylon, which is obviously see-through, which for certain beads, if you're using clear glass beads or what have you, then this is a good one because you're not going to get any of the colour coming through the bead. Like the plastic coated wires, this doesn't actually knot. Again, it's that kind of fishing line sort of quality to it that makes the knots slip undone very easily. So what we do with this one, because the crimps would cut through this because it's not got the steel cable in, we actually knot this and then put a little dab of glue or clear nail varnish on the knot. If you leave that to dry, then you can trim the tail ends off and that will just seal the knot and hold it secure. Both of these threads will come in different thicknesses, so you can use the appropriate one for the size of bead. The next one I've got here is Elasticity. It comes under different sort of trade names, Stretch Magic, various things like that. But essentially it's like the nylon, but it's stretchy. Really, really useful, particularly bracelets. It's obviously very good for. It's good for using with kids. They can make a necklace and just knot it and then just stretch it on and off, so you don't have to worry about clasps or whatever. In the same way as the nylon, the knots slip on this as well though. So again, tie the knot, kind of a double knot really tight, little dab of glue or nail varnish, let it dry, trim the tail ends off. I will be showing you that later on when we actually make a bracelet using this. And the last one I've got here is the Wildfire. Again, you get similar threads coming under different names. This is the Beadalon variety. It's a very strong thread. It's very fine, so you can use it. You can use it either on its own or you can use it with a needle and thread. It's thermally bonded, which helps to stop it fraying. It's kind of got a coating on it. You can knot it, as I say, very, very versatile. You can use it in a lot of different situations. So that just gives you a basic idea of the sort of the threads that you would use, mostly without needles, although as I say, the Wildfire you can use with a needle. Next I'll show you things like the Superlon D and the Nymo where you would need a needle for it. Moving on now to the finest threads, most of which you need to use with a needle. These are mostly used if you're working with rock eyes or seed beads and you're doing the stitches, kind of like peyote stitch or right-angled weave, that sort of thing. These are the kind of threads you're going to use for that. Again, there's different makes, but they're all really very similar. They're a fine thread that's a kind of nylon-based thread, so they're nice and strong. There's slightly different thicknesses. I mean, we've got, some of the trade names. There's Nymo, there's Superlon. They do come in slightly different thicknesses. And you say you do need a needle to work with those. You really can't work without a needle on these fine ones. I tend to use a size 10 needle because it's kind of big enough that you can actually thread it, but it will still go through some of the beads. When you're getting onto the very fine needles like the 15, some of these thicker ones like the Superlon D can be a bit trickier to thread. You might want to go down a size in threads for those. Another alternative is the silk threads, which come in the little packets. There's 2 meters on the little packets, but these come already with their own wire threader actually attached to them, because one of the drawbacks of the silk threads is they fray very, very easily. So say with that little threader already on there, it's kind of all complete. Lastly on here, I've got the wax to show you. It's a beeswax based wax, but that's for actually waxing the threads. So if you're using some of these threads, some people like to actually slide them through this first to wax them. It stops them fraying. It can make them easier to thread if you've got wax on the end, and it can stop them getting tangled up. So that kind of covers all the different sort of thickness of threads, really, as I say, starting at the very thick leather and cord and working all the way down to these ones. That should give you pretty much anything you want to make. You should have something in there that will do it. But when we do some projects, we'll use different threads there to show you, the ways in which they work.